Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. This video is about the differences between Android versus iOS operating system. So it's about Android versus iOS. So first of all, I would like to introduce you to our group member. Start with the first member, which is Nur Farisha Iza binti Yusri. The second member is myself, Nur Nailina Biha binti Subo. The third member is Nur Izzati binti Muhammad Nasir. And the last member is Nur Ayuni Nabila binti Mat Asri. So, what is our agenda for today? Our agenda for today is about the 6 aspects of the differences between iOS and Android. So, start with the first aspect, which is reliability. The second aspect is security. The third aspect is ease of design. The fourth aspect is implementation. The fifth aspect is flexibility. And the last aspect is efficiency. So first of all, I would like to introduce you guys to what is actually Android and iOS. As we know, Android and iOS are the world's two most popular mobile operating systems. iOS is Apple's proprietary mobile operating system for its iPhone, iPad, and iPod Touch device that have closed operating system. Meanwhile, Android is an open source operating system that developed by the Google for its tablet and smartphone. So in this video, we will see the difference between these two operating systems in terms of 6 aspects. Thank you. So I will pass it to the next member.
Thank you, Naili. Now we're going to look for the first aspect, which is reliability between iOS and Android. iOS outperforms Android in terms of performance. It performs well and smoothly due to their superior internal specifications, whereas for Android, sometimes it slows down and hangs. iOS is designed to enhance performance in whatever possible way, resulting in outstanding performance designs. But OEMs in Android are in charge of optimizing software for specific hardware, however this is not always efficient. OEMs or original equipment manufacturers mean that Android makes their device from the component parts that they bought from other organizations such as Samsung, Oppo and others, so it is not always efficient. The fact that Apple controls the whole manufacturing process, so they do not require super powerful specifications to compete with high-end Android products. For processor, Android Qualcomm CPUs are noticeably slower than iOS processor. As a result, I think iOS is more reliable than Android. That's because iOS is consistent well in performance and work better than most Android devices. That's it from me. I will pass to the next presenter, which is Naili, to explain about the second aspect. Thank you.
Thank you. So now I will continue the presentation to explain about the second aspect, which is security. So, the difference between iOS and Android in terms of security is iOS has a more closed and controlled ecosystem, which means that all apps must be authorized and distributed through the App Store, which enable the Apple to analyze and screen apps for security vulnerability. In other words, we can say that Apple tightly controls the hardware and software. Meanwhile, in Android is an open system, which means that the app can be obtained from numerous sources, which make it more difficult to ensure that all apps are secure. In terms of updated version, iOS updates are released concurrently so that the devices are running at the most recent, which is in the secure version of the operating system. This means Apple ensures that all devices running iOS meet certain security standards. Meanwhile, in Android, updates are released at different times for different devices, so each Android device is not in the same updated version, and making it more difficult to ensure that all devices are running at the most recent, which is in the secure version of the operating system. In terms of this aspect, we can conclude that iOS has a better security. Thank you, so I will pass it to the next member.
Thank you, Nelly, for your explanation about the security. Now, I will explain about the ease of design. To design, Android uses material design, named Google's Material Design Guidelines, while iOS uses flat design, which is Apple's Human Interface Guideline, HIG, as the guidance to design. The first difference between iOS and Android is obviously in terms of the navigation interface. Android has back, home, and overview button at the bottom, while iOS has no back, home, and overview button, but users still can see the overview by swiping up from the bottom left. Next, Android uses open source model, while iOS uses closed source model. Android is based on Linux kernel, while iOS is based on Unix-like operating system named Darwin. The advantage of Android is open source use, allowing easier user interface customization, while the disadvantage is it runs slow on low specification devices. For iOS, the advantage is it has simple interface, while the disadvantage is as it uses closed source, any user interface customization is difficult to be done. To conclude, both iOS and Android is easy to design. At the end, the ease of design depends on their design guidelines and the user's preference themselves. Some may prefer iOS design and some may prefer Android design.
Thank you, Farisha. Now I will explain about the fourth aspect, which is implementation in iOS and Android. Implementation in iOS need less time and cost compared to Android. First point, iOS developer utilize Swift, which is Apple native programming language. It's more convenient and require less code work, so it saves time to do the code work. For Android, it relies on Java or Kotlin, so anyone who knows Java can create Android applications. Next, iOS is not an open source platform. It promotes substantially greater standards for the included software. It's to assure that the app's proper and seamless operation and on all devices. For Android, it is currently highly advantageous for Java developers to convert the code script into a mobile application, and the apps may also incorporate Android application development services. Next, for iOS, information supply saves times during development and lowers future expenditures for bug solutions. Android users usually resort to outdated version of the operating system leading in error, and unexpectedly problems in otherwise fully working new apps. So, as a result, I think implementation in iOS needs less time, cost, and work compared to Android. Thank you. Now I will pass to the next presenter, which is Izati, to explain about the fifth aspect. Thank you.
Thank you, Ayuni. Now proceed with the next criteria, which is flexibility. The first difference between Android and iOS in this criteria is firstly in terms of customization. Android is more open and flexible than iOS. You can choose from a variety of options and customize Android software, including altering the install Chrome browser. Android is more open source because it refers to software for which the original source code is made freely available and may be shared and updated. In contrast, iOS is closed source and tightly regulated by Apple. This implies that operating system customization and modification options are limited for developers. iOS is not as versatile, although it allows you to change the default browser for certain apps rather than the entire system, when compared to Apple operating system, which is closed source that prevents users from freely accessing the source code. Next difference is in terms of hardware options. Compared to Apple device, Android devices are known to be less priced, have a greater variety of hardware alternatives, and occasionally have higher specifications in terms of screen size, RAM, storage capacity, and other factors. Meanwhile, iOS devices are solely supported by Apple hardware, which can be more expensive. Thus, Android offers more flexibility in terms of customization, hardware options compared to iOS. Okay, now we proceed with the criteria. Now we proceed with the criteria efficiency. The first difference between Android and iOS can be different based on the app's optimization. Android apps can be customized for a range of platforms, which can make it harder to attain great performance and efficiency. In contrast, iOS apps are more effectively optimized for their particular device, which can improve performance and effectiveness. Next difference is hardware compatibility. Finding an Android device that matches your performance and efficiency requirement may be simpler due to the vast range of pricing point and hardware options available, while iOS is more challenging to find a device that satisfies the requirement for performance and efficiency due to only compatible with Apple's own hardware can make it. Okay, next difference is based on apps performance. Android developer must optimize for a wide range of devices which varies hardware configuration. In contrast, iOS have a reputation for being quicker and more effective than those Android. This is because of the fact that iOS developer who must optimize for the limited range of device. Overall, in this criteria, both Android and iOS have their own strength and weakness. That's all from me. Now I will pass to the next presenter. Thank you.
Before we end this presentation, there is a conclusion that can be made, which is Android is more flexible and more customizable user interface, but lesser reliability and less secure, while iOS is less flexible and has a limited user interface customization, but is more secure than Android.